It came through a song, or maybe it was a silence shaped like one, the particular quiet after music stops, when the air still holds the frequency and your body hasn't yet released what it absorbed. You weren't looking for anything. You weren't in a fragile moment or a tender one or any moment you could have flagged in advance as dangerous. You were just there, inside an ordinary stretch of time, when something arrived through sound that had no business carrying what it carried. Not the melody, not the words. Something underneath both of those. An older channel, one that bypasses the thinking mind entirely and lands directly in whatever part of you keeps the oldest records. You didn't choose to feel it. You didn't open a door. It came through anyway. And the thing about a sound that carries too much is that there is no arguing with it afterward, no filing it under coincidence, no convincing yourself it meant nothing because the body already received it before the mind formed an opinion. That's what brought you here. Not curiosity, not the algorithm. Something in you recognized that what just moved through you was not random, and it needed a place to take that recognition. Before we go further into what this transmission holds, like this video, subscribe, and write in the comments, "I remember." Not as a wish, as a fact your body already knows. That phrase is not sentimental. It is a signal to yourself that something real just arrived in you, and you are present enough to receive it. Because what opened in you through that sound is exactly what this specific alignment in the sky was designed to reach. And what it's about to show you, about who has been carrying you in their awareness and why this moment is not a coincidence, changes the entire meaning of what you have been living through. Here is what most people do not understand about a moment like the one you just had. They call it nostalgia. They call it overthinking. They call it the mind doing what the mind does, wandering, cycling, revisiting. This is not any of those things. This is a signal arriving from a specific frequency that only opens when certain cosmic conditions align with certain internal conditions, and both of those things are true right now. The sky is doing something precise, and you are someone who earned the right to receive it. At some point in the recent past, maybe months ago, maybe longer, you arrived at a fork. One direction was easier. One direction was the version of this that looked like moving on, the clean break, the practical pivot, the story you could tell that would make sense to everyone around you and require nothing further of your interior. That direction had logic behind it. It had social support. It had the comfortable agreement of everyone who loved you telling you that letting go was the healthy thing to do. You didn't take it. Not because you were stubborn and not because you couldn't see the logic, but because something in you recognized that the easier direction would have required you to drop something real, to set it down and pretend it weighed less than it did. And you chose, quietly and without announcement, to keep holding it. That choice, that specific, private, unwitnessed choice, is the exact credential this portal opens for. Not dramatic suffering. Not public devotion, the quiet refusal to betray what you actually knew was real. Now here is what the sky is doing and why it matters today specifically. The full moon reaching its peak tonight is moving through the final degrees of Aquarius before crossing into Pisces, and that crossing is significant in a way that the numbers alone cannot capture. Aquarius governs the part of the human mind that understands things from a distance. The observer, the analyzer, the one who can see a situation clearly because they have maintained enough separation from it to think. Pisces is the sign that dissolves that separation entirely. It is the part of human experience where the walls between your inner world and the outer one become permeable, where what you feel and what you dream and what you once loved all occupy the same space without hierarchy, without the usual filters that keep memory and present separated. A full moon crossing from Aquarius into Pisces tonight means something specific. The part of you that has been managing this from a safe emotional distance is being asked to feel it fully, not to fall apart, not to go backward, but to let what has been held at arm's length inside your own heart actually arrive. The sun sits in Leo right now, exactly alongside Jupiter, and that combination matters enormously for what you are experiencing. The sun in Leo is the self at its most awake. Not performing, not seeking approval, but genuinely illuminated from within. Jupiter expanding right beside it means that whatever the sun touches is being magnified beyond what is ordinary. Your sense of yourself is not small right now. it is wide, and that width is part of why what arrived through that sound landed the way it did. You are large enough right now to hold something you might have previously had to push away. Venus and Mars are in a tight, close tension with each other, desire and action pulled in different directions, the heart wanting one thing and the will wanting to manage how it gets there. That tension is not a problem. That tension is the body's honest report of being at exactly the point where something genuine is about to clarify. And then there is Neptune, retrograde in Aries. Neptune is the force that makes the walls between what you feel and what you've been pretending not to feel dissolve. In ordinary forward motion, Neptune can blur things, make feelings dreamy, romantic, imprecise. But in retrograde, Neptune turns its dissolving power inward. The comfortable fiction you've been maintaining about how much this still matters to you, Neptune retrograde is quietly eroding it from the inside, not violently, the way water moves through stone, patient, inevitable. Saturn retrograde in Aries is enforcing a kind of structural accounting. Saturn governs what gets to be permanent, what gets built into the foundation of your life, and what gets released. In retrograde, it is reviewing what was built. It is asking whether the lessons that were supposed to arrive actually landed, not as concepts, not as things you can articulate in a conversation, but as lived changes in how you move through the world. This is not a sentimental full moon. This is a full audit. And what it is auditing is you, specifically, the you who has been carrying something real across a long stretch of silence. This portal does not open for everyone tonight. That is not poetic flattery. It is an accurate description of how this specific alignment functions. It opens for people who have done something particular, something that cannot be faked and cannot be rushed. It opens for people who loved without receiving full presence in return, and who did not let that absence hollow them out, who kept something alive inside themselves, not obsessively, not destructively, but genuinely, because it was worth keeping. Not because it was comfortable, because it was true. That was not love failing. That was love being honest. It was showing you the precise difference between what you had and what you were actually capable of. And instead of contracting around that distance, you expanded into it. You used it to find out what you were made of. That was not you being unworthy of receiving. That was them being unready to give. And the months in between were not the universe withholding. That was the universe building something in you that could not have been built any other way. What you built is not a wound you've learned to manage. It's a kind of knowing that only exists on the other side of sustained honesty. The specific people this portal opens for are the ones who stopped pretending at some point that what they were feeling was smaller than it was, who refused the comfortable narrative, who chose the harder question, not out of masochism but out of a genuine commitment to what was actually true. You did not perform your way to this moment. You arrived here by what you refused to do. You didn't send the message when the longing was loudest. You didn't collapse the space with urgency when urgency was available and justified. You held the realness of what you felt without requiring it to be confirmed by someone else's behavior. And that restraint, that specific, quiet, costly restraint, built something in you that nothing else could have built. Not wisdom as a concept, wisdom as weight, the kind that lives in the body, the kind other people can feel before they can name it. You are standing at this moment not because time passed. You are standing here because something in you genuinely shifted, the way the ground shifts after long rain, all the way down, not just the surface. Now here is the part the delay was protecting you from. If this had opened 6 months earlier, or a year, you would have arrived at the connection still carrying an unresolved question about your own worth. Not obviously, not in a way you could have named, but it would have been present underneath everything. The subtle need for the connection to answer something, to confirm something, to prove something that you hadn't yet been able to prove to yourself. What that does to a reunion is make it about the question rather than about the person. You would have been present, but underneath the presence, you would have been waiting for a verdict. And a connection received while waiting for a verdict is not really received at all, it is audited. The delay protected you from arriving at something real and still needing it to be your proof. What arrives now can be received as contact, actual contact between two people who are both finally present, not the contact of someone who needs to be chosen, the contact of someone who is genuinely available. Stay with this. What comes next is the part that most people miss because they're focused on themselves, when the more surprising truth is what has been happening on the other side of the silence. Right now, in this specific cosmic window, the person who is connected to you through this thread is sitting at the edge of something they have not yet said. Not because they don't feel it, because they feel it completely, and the full weight of what honesty would require has been holding them in place. This is not someone who is suppressing what they feel or rationalizing it into something more manageable. This is someone who knows exactly what they feel, has known it for some time, and has been sitting with the full complexity of what it would mean to say it out loud. The feeling is clear to them. What they are carrying is the weight of its implications, what it would require them to admit about what they want, what they've been afraid of, what they almost let pass by. Tonight, that weight is shifting. Not because they decided something, because the specific quality of this full moon crossing into Pisces removes the comfort of remaining in the middle. The Piscean field dissolves the ability to stay in the in-between, the place where feeling something fully and acting on it are still two separate things. What has been livable as an internal experience is beginning to feel unlivable as a permanent condition. Here is what that looks like from the inside of their ordinary day. They are moving through tasks, real tasks, things that require attention, things they are genuinely trying to be present for, and the awareness of you keeps surfacing, not as a distraction they can dismiss, as a fact that reasserts itself with slightly more force each time they try to redirect away from it. The thought of you arrives not with longing's familiar softness, but with something more urgent, something that feels, increasingly, like a question that has run out of time. The specific quality of tonight's transit for them is this: the walls they have built between what they feel and what they've been willing to acknowledge are becoming thin. Neptune retrograde is not dramatic. It is quiet and it is thorough. It works the way light works on a curtain that was never quite opaque enough. Slowly, the room behind it becomes visible. Their nervous system is registering something they cannot attribute to thought, a pull that is not mental, a gravity that operates below the level of decision. They may try to busy themselves, they may apply additional logic to the situation, revisit the reasons that have held them in the comfortable middle, but the logic is showing its age. The reasons are not wrong, exactly, but they no longer feel like the whole truth. What they are experiencing right now is the specific discomfort of someone who knows what they want and is standing at the precise moment when not saying it has stopped being a neutral act. Staying silent now is no longer just postponement. It is beginning to feel like a choice, one with a cost they can now see. They know. They have always known. Today is the day the knowing became too heavy to carry quietly. And now, here is where you stand. Between two ways of being inside this same moment. You feel them. You feel the pull of what this transmission is opening. You feel the particular quality of this night and what it is making available. And somewhere in you, there are two different orientations toward it. Two different ways of receiving what is arriving. No one is watching this moment. That is exactly what makes it the most important one. The first orientation is the familiar one. It knows this feeling, the arrival of possibility, the sudden aliveness of something that had gone quiet, and it responds by trying to manage the shape of what happens next. Not consciously, not cynically. But there is a background process that begins immediately, reviewing what you might say, anticipating what they might do, arranging the internal furniture around a specific outcome, monitoring the situation from the inside out. The body in this state is not unkind, but it is slightly ahead of the present, already in the next moment, already preparing for the wave before it arrives. The hands have a quality of readiness about them. The mind is moving slightly faster than the actual moment requires. The second orientation is different in a way that is hard to name from outside it. It is not passive. It is not indifference. It is the specific quality of having set something down, not abandoned it, set it down, and feeling, for the first time in a while, what it is like to be inside the present moment without managing it. The shoulders settle without being asked. The breath moves differently, not deeper in a dramatic way, but more completely, the way breath moves when there is nothing being held against it. The mind is present, not quiet exactly, but not running ahead of the room. This is not the universe withholding. This is the universe waiting to see which version of you steps forward. The managing state has kept you safe. It has genuinely kept you safe, organized your hopes into shapes that couldn't hurt you as badly if they didn't land. But what it cannot do is receive what is arriving. What is arriving requires open hands, and open hands and managed outcomes cannot exist in the same moment. The question that separates these two orientations is not, what do I do next? It is quieter than that. It is, can you let this arrive in its own shape without deciding what shape that needs to be? The answer to that question is already in the body. It arrived before the mind formed the words. Trust what was there first. Now go to the deepest layer of what this connection was actually for, because what this moment is opening in you is not only about what happened between two people, it is about what those two people came into contact to activate in you, a lesson so specific, so precisely designed that it required exactly this person, exactly this timeline, exactly this particular texture of love and delay and recognition. This connection came to teach you something about timing, not timing as a practical matter, not wrong place, wrong year. Timing as a spiritual truth, that love and internal readiness must arrive simultaneously to be real, that the most genuine feeling, arriving before both people are fully ready to hold it without distorting it, will bend under the weight of its own arrival, that what you feel for someone and what you are capable of receiving from them are two different measurements, and both have to be true at once. The contract was not a promise that they would stay. It was not even a promise of reunion. The contract was specific. Not forever, not even reunion, but the permanent, irreversible shift in how you understand what love requires of you. And here is the grief of that recognition, and it deserves its full weight. There is real grief in understanding that the love was genuine and the timing was still wrong. Not wrong because either of you was inadequate. Wrong the way a seed planted in the wrong season is wrong. The seed is real, the care was real, the soil was real, but something in the conditions wasn't ready, and love requires conditions the way everything living does. Sitting with that, not rushing past it, not converting it into a lesson before you have actually felt the loss, is part of what this full moon is asking. You loved someone with real love, and the specific form that love took, its particular shape, its particular timeline, could only have existed while something in you was still unresolved about your own readiness. That does not diminish the love. It contextualizes it. It shows you that what you were also loving underneath the person was the version of yourself who was about to become capable of something more complete. Saturn enforces these contracts not through cruelty, but through precision. It does not release you from the lesson by letting time pass. It releases you when the lesson is not just understood but lived, when the understanding has moved from concept to body, from intellectual acknowledgement to the way you actually show up in a room. The contract was specific, not forever, not even reunion, but the permanent, irreversible shift in how you understand what love requires of you. And that shift has already happened, not because you decided it had, because you cannot unknow what you now know about the difference between love as a feeling and love as a shared readiness. What ends here is not the love. What ends is the version of the connection that could only exist while the lesson was still unfinished. The love, if it was real, does not require the dynamic to survive, and your body already knows this. Not as a conclusion your mind reached, as a settled fact your nervous system has quietly accepted while you were paying attention to other things. Notice the quality of stillness that has been moving through you lately. Not numbness. You know the difference now, and that knowing itself is evidence of how much has changed. This is a different kind of quiet, a quiet in the middle of the day that has no urgency behind it, no sense of something being suppressed beneath the surface, a stillness that is not absence, but presence, the specific presence of someone who is fully inside a moment rather than preparing for the next one. Sleep has been different, arriving earlier than it used to, carrying you more completely, leaving less residue in the first minutes of waking. The morning quality has changed. Where it once arrived already loaded with the weight of what hadn't resolved yet, it now arrives closer to clean. Not every morning, but enough mornings that you have noticed. Certain names, specific ones, ones that used to arrive in your awareness with a physical hook, with the particular sensation of something caught, are passing through differently now. They arrive, they are present, and then they move through without the body closing around them the way it once did. Not because you care less, because the caring is no longer bracing for impact. There is a quality to the way you inhabit a room that is quietly different, not louder, not more dramatic, but more complete. The way you take up space in a chair, in a conversation, in a quiet moment alone, something that was being held small has extended slightly toward its actual dimensions without requiring a decision to do so. This is not the quiet of having given up. This is the quiet of something that has genuinely finished. The body knows the difference, even when the mind is still catching up. And as that settling deepens, as what was once managed from the inside begins to simply be known, the life around you starts to organize itself differently. You are not waiting to become someone. The becoming already happened, in private, without announcement, in the exact window where it had to happen to be real. What is here now is not preparation. It is arrival. Decisions feel cleaner than they did. Not because the circumstances simplified, the circumstances are as complex as they ever were, but something that used to divide your attention from inside has become still. Where it once required genuine effort to know what you wanted, it now arrives without deliberation. The want is clear. The preference is clear. The boundary is clear, not as a position you've adopted, but as something the body has already decided without requiring a meeting. The things that used to feel exciting but draining now register as hollow before they even fully arrive. Something in you has gotten faster at reading the actual frequency beneath the presented surface, what is genuinely nourishing versus what is stimulating in a way that costs more than it gives. That distinction used to require analysis. Now, it is arriving as sensation before the analysis begins. What used to feel like safety, the familiar, the known, the dynamic you understood because you had survived it before, now registers differently. Less like safety, more like a ceiling you can see from the inside, not with resentment, with the calm recognition of someone who has simply grown taller than the room. The universe is no longer trying to guide you toward alignment. It is beginning to respond to the alignment you already carry. Synchronicities are changing their character. Where they once felt like nudges, like arrows pointing you toward something you hadn't yet arrived at, they now feel more like confirmations. The universe is not showing you a direction. It is reflecting back the direction you are already moving in. That is a completely different relationship with the signs you receive. And the people around you are becoming easier to read, not because they have become simpler, but because you are no longer filtering what they offer through the distortion of your own unfinished questions. When someone is genuinely available, you feel it immediately. When someone is performing availability while holding something back, that too arrives as information, clear, quiet, not requiring confirmation. After this settling, after this landing, certain things become unavailable to your nervous system, not as a rule you've set, as a fact of the new frequency you carry. Being held at emotional arm's length by someone who knows exactly what they feel, knows it clearly, has known it for some time, and has chosen the comfort of ambiguity over the honesty of saying it, that is something your system can no longer accommodate without registering it immediately as incompatible, not with anger, the way an ear trained in music registers an out-of-tune note without deliberation. The wrong pitch arrives, and the body knows before the mind has named it. Carrying the full weight of a connection while the other person remains comfortable in its ambiguity, bringing your full presence, your full attention, your genuine emotional availability into a dynamic where the other person has reserved the right to remain uncommitted. Your nervous system has stopped making this invisible. It now surfaces what that costs in real time before you have had the chance to rationalize it into something more bearable. Explaining your depth to someone who uses your explanation as proof that you are too much. Waiting for honesty that the other person has already decided you do not deserve. These are not things you tolerate with drama, with ultimatums, with the performance of boundaries. They are simply things you can no longer make invisible to yourself. The awareness is immediate. The registration is automatic, and what that produces is not hardness. Nothing about what you have become is hard. What it produces is a precision that cannot be borrowed or adopted. It was earned. It was built. It was made real by the specific experience of staying in contact with what was true even when it was uncomfortable. You did not close yourself. You clarified, and clarity does not reduce what is possible. It removes what was never going to be real anyway and makes the remaining space available for what actually is. So, if this person steps back into your field now, the one connected to you through this thread, the one who has been sitting at the edge of honesty that this full moon is making increasingly unavoidable. Here is what you will find. The question of whether they return is no longer the question that governs your interior, but the answer, when it arrives, will be legible, clearly, immediately, without the distortion of need bending the signal. You know you still want this. That is not the question. The question, the one your clarity now allows you to hold without flinching, is whether what returns is the same version of the dynamic or something genuinely different, whether the person who steps back into your field is the same version of themselves or the version that has done something real with the time in between. You are not waiting for them with held breath. You are not bracing. You are not arranging your interior around any particular outcome. You are present, grounded, and, for the first time in this particular story, genuinely capable of seeing clearly, not through the lens of longing bending the signal toward what you hope, not through the lens of protection bending it toward what you fear. The signal will arrive as it actually is, and you will receive it accurately. If what returns is real, if they arrive carrying the specific weight of someone who has genuinely moved through something rather than simply moved through time, your body will register it before the first full sentence ends, not as a match for what you hoped they would be, as a recognition of who they actually became. And if what they bring is the old version, the familiar comfort of connection without full honesty, the warmth without the willingness to be fully seen, that too will be legible immediately. Not as a betrayal, as information, as the answer to a question you are finally equipped to receive without it dismantling you. If they do not return at all, if this window opens and closes without them stepping through it, what that confirms is not what you feared it would confirm. It does not confirm that what you felt wasn't real. It confirms that the lesson arrived through them, was completed in you, and does not require them to witness or ratify the completion to be real. You lose nothing you were ever actually holding, because what you were holding was never them. It was the knowing they unlocked in you, and that knowing is already yours. Both doors open onto something real now, not because the outcomes are equal, because you are no longer different people depending on which one walks through. That steadiness is the thing. That is everything. If something in this transmission reached you somewhere specific, not just as a thought, but as a recognition your body received before your mind finished processing it, do one thing before you leave. Like this video, not as a gesture toward an algorithm, as a signal to yourself that you were present for this, that you received it, that you are choosing to let it land rather than letting it pass through you unacknowledged. Subscribe, so what comes next finds you. These transmissions are not isolated. They are connected, each one building on what the one before it opened. What arrives in the next window speaks directly to what this one unlocked. And in the comments, write, "I'm ready to receive it clearly." Say those words out loud as you type them, for your nervous system, for the part of you that has been carrying something real across a long and specific silence. Words given real voice do something that silent reading cannot. They complete a circuit. They make the receiving actual. And if someone in your life is standing at a threshold they cannot quite name, someone who has been holding something they haven't been able to let fully arrive, share this with them. Your soul already knows who. Here is what is true right now, in this exact moment, without requiring anything else to happen to make it real. The thing you have been waiting for, not the person, not the reunion, but the feeling of being genuinely arrived inside your own life, is not approaching. It is here. It has been here, accumulating quietly while you were paying attention to the distance between now and what you hoped for. The full moon crossing into Pisces tonight is not creating something new. It is illuminating what was already built. It is holding a light up to the interior you renovated in private, in the dark, without anyone watching or confirming it was working. And what the light reveals is not a work in progress. It is someone who is ready. Not ready as a posture, ready as a fact. That is what has arrived. That is what this night is confirming. And what is genuinely arrived does not require you to reach for it. It is simply already here. And that readiness, The specific quality of it, the way it feels different from anticipation or hope, or the particular ache of wanting something that hasn't arrived yet, deserves to be named precisely, because most people confuse it with those other states and dismiss what they are actually carrying. Readiness does not lean forward. That is the first thing to understand. Anticipation leans, hope leans. The posture of waiting, even patient waiting, even dignified waiting, has a quality of forward tilt to it, a slight but persistent orientation toward a future moment that hasn't arrived yet. Readiness is different. It is vertical. It is fully upright inside the present moment, neither pulled toward what is coming nor anchored to what is past. You may have noticed this quality in yourself recently without having a name for it. The absence of the lean, the strange, unfamiliar experience of being completely inside now rather than adjacent to it. This is not detachment. This is arrival. The distinction matters because detachment and readiness can feel similar from the outside. Both are quiet, both are still, both resist the urgency that used to govern so much of how you moved through this particular story. But they are opposite in direction. Detachment moves away from something. Readiness moves toward it. Or rather, it has already moved and is now simply present at the destination, waiting without impatience because the waiting is no longer experienced as distance. You are not on the far side of the river, watching the crossing. You are already on the bank where what is meant for you arrives, and here is what that means for tonight specifically. The full moon at its peak illuminates whatever has been building in the dark, not metaphorically, but as a precise description of what full moons do to human emotional reality. Whatever has been quietly accumulating in you across this window, whatever has been growing without requiring your conscious attention to sustain it, is being lit from outside itself tonight. Not so that you can see it for the first time, you have felt it building, so that it can be seen from the other side. So that what you have become in private becomes visible to the field you inhabit, visible to the people in your life, visible specifically to the one who has been sitting at the edge of a honesty they have not yet spoken. There is a specific quality to the way a full moon in Pisces works on unfinished emotional truth. Pisces does not force things into the open, it dissolves the container that was keeping them in. The difference between those two things is everything. Being forced into openness creates resistance. The person being forced will brace, will defend, will find new and more elaborate ways to maintain the enclosure. But when the container dissolves, when the thing that was holding the feeling in place quietly ceases to exist, what is inside has nowhere to go except out. And it moves outward, not as an explosion, but as a tide. Inevitable, unhurried, impossible to hold back by trying harder. This is why tonight is not the night to reach. This is the night to be findable. The reaching energy, the impulse to make contact, to create a moment, to engineer the conditions under which something might happen, belongs to the old orientation. It is the managing state wearing the costume of love. And love, in its truest form, is not a managed event. It is a recognition that occurs between two people who are both present enough to receive it. What you are being asked to do tonight by this specific alignment of sky and soul is not to initiate. It is to be so fully present inside your own life, your own body, your own genuine reality, that what is seeking you can find you without obstruction. That is not passive. Do not mistake stillness for passivity. Being fully present, genuinely inhabiting your own field without the noise of management and anticipation and strategic positioning, that is one of the most active things a human being can do. It requires everything the previous version of you spent on reaching, redirected inward, and it produces something the reaching never could, a genuine signal, not a performed one, not an engineered one, the specific frequency of someone who is real, who is ready, who is no longer arranging themselves around an outcome. That frequency is what this full moon is amplifying tonight. Not your hope, your reality. And the reality of who you are right now, the version of you that chose the harder direction at the fork, that held something real without requiring it to be confirmed, that survived the specific silence of this particular love without becoming smaller. That reality is not a quiet thing. It only feels quiet because you have been living inside it. From the outside, from the field, from the awareness of someone whose recognition of you has been growing in the specific way that recognition grows when it is no longer being suppressed. From there, what you carry right now has a quality that is unmistakable, not because you performed it, because you became it. Those are not the same thing, and the difference between them is exactly what this transmission has been pointing toward from the beginning. So let tonight be what it is. Let the full moon do what full moons do. Illuminate, clarify, bring into visibility what the dark has been quietly building. Let the sound that arrived through you earlier, the one that carried more than it should have, be understood now for what it was. Not an intrusion, not a coincidence, not your mind doing what minds do when they are restless. A signal, an accurate one. The soul's navigation arriving through the only channel that bypasses the filters, sound, memory, the oldest frequency, to tell you something that the thinking mind had been working very hard to manage into something smaller. You were right to feel what you felt. You were right not to dismiss it. You were right to let it bring you here. What is arriving is already in motion, not as a promise, as a fact about the direction things are moving. The specific, measurable, real direction of two people who have both separately been doing the work that makes genuine contact possible. The timing is no longer a question of if. It is only a question of the exact shape in which what is real finally becomes undeniable to both of you at once. And when that moment arrives, and it will arrive in its own form, without being engineered, without being forced into a shape the mind decided was acceptable, you will recognize it not as the thing you hoped for, but as the thing that was always going to be true. The difference between those two experiences is everything. One is relief. One is recognition, and recognition, when it comes, lands somewhere below relief entirely, in the part of you that does not celebrate, that does not perform, that simply registers the arrival of what it always knew was real and rests. That resting place is what this full moon was always building toward. For you, in this body, on this specific night, not as a destination you are still approaching, as the ground you are already standing on, fully, at last, without the lean.